Good evening, everybody. Look, I'm doing the classic thing of noticing that my hair's
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all very
Hello, good evening.
Wait, hello? You get to speak. I don't think they can hear you. If it's a live event, they're the only one.
Somebody called Zoom user. Can I change to your name so that we all know who you are? Oh, and we've got a dad's iPad as well. This is classic stuff. Good evening, everybody.
Hello, Avril.
There we go. The lady in the green shirt and the cardigan. Oh no, sorry, that's you, Carmel. Excellent. I think you've renamed yourself. I'm just checking we've got names for everybody. We've got somebody with Dad's iPad.
Yeah.
I can change it for you if you just tell me what your name is.
Oh, you rather I did that, would you? It's Sue Sleet.
Lovely.
Hey,
Jean.
Oh,
Michael, can you just put let me. Can I?
No.
Can you put me? They can see.
Why do you need camera on again?
Right, sorry, let me change. Sue, you Sleet, EET?
yes.
Marvellous. Right, there we go. And I'm just going to just phone to say they need the link. So let's let everybody in. There we go. More people joining all the time. That's fantastic. Right, let me just get this.
Boarding in.
There we go. Excellent. Oh my goodness, we've got loads of people. Brilliant. And you're all involved in one way or another in ministry to the sick, or would like to be. I don't think very many people are doing anything at the moment. Just all very timely this evening. Thank you. And just to say that we are recording this because quite a few people couldn't make it this evening. We're very keen to be able to access the training. So if that's a problem, please do keep your cameras off. But it's lovely to see people's faces. So if you are not bothered, it will mostly just be me and Father Kevin talking, and we won't have too many other people on the screen. So if you don't mind, then keep your cameras on because it's nice to see people. We've got Father Kevin. Good evening, Father Kevin.
Good evening, all.
Hi there.
We've got 28 people. Thank you very much, everybody. That's brilliant. And we aren't even at 7 o'clock yet, so that's very impressive. Coming all the time. Okay. We'll probably just give everybody another minute to tip up and then we'll get started.
Say hello. Hey, you can say hello. Hello.
Please do say hello. Yes, very nice to see everybody. Nice to see familiar faces, nice to see new faces as well. And you're all being very good and putting your mics off as well, which is brilliant. That does help to keep the noise down on the call. Excellent. So just to give you a bit of a preamble while we're waiting just for people to finish joining us, although we've got 30 people, so we're doing pretty well. I think we've got most people who registered anyway this evening. Obviously, we are we haven't been able to take communion into people's homes for 18 months now, and this has been a real issue. It's been very painful, both for the people who would have received communion and for all of you who are the ones taking it. And so we're keen that we can make progress on this and get people back to doing this as soon as possible. So, you know, these regulations are a way of us being able to do this safely and do it in a way that will give confidence to all the different groups that we're going to be taking communion out to. So it's really important that we can explore our way through these guidelines this evening, and then we really do want your comments, want your thoughts as to how this is going to work, and whether we've done this practically. So I think we are going to get started. I'm going to mute everybody just to keep down the noise, and then Father Kevin, I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind starting us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. And as Avril said, it's lovely we've got so many people here for something that is very important. So let's begin in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Yesterday we celebrated Peter and Paul, and today we celebrate the first martyrs of Rome. So these were people who gave their lives for the freedom to be able to be people of the Eucharist. So let us remember that price they paid and the challenge that then leaves us. So we pray the prayer that the Lord taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Our Lady Immaculate, pray for us. St. Thomas Becket, pray for us.
Thank you very much, Father Kevin, and thank you to everybody who is with us this evening. And just to say once again for everybody, we are recording this, and that means that we can pass it on. So I will send out to you the link to the recording. If there are other people in your congregations who would like to watch this, they'll be able to access the training as well. And we have some guidelines which we'll send out to you after this evening, which is what we're going to talk through this evening. So the whole debate around taking communion out to the sick has just been quite difficult and quite one where we're really torn. People really want to do this, and on the other hand we have absolutely got to keep people safe. So the big thing that we need to say to you this evening is just because we can do this and it has been allowed in law now doesn't mean that we necessarily should. So that's the very first thing to say. We know that the Delta variant is very infectious, and we know that you can, as Andrew Marr has demonstrated to us, that you can get it if you've been double vaccinated. We know that we're still not out of the woods with this yet. So the very first thing to say is, you know, let's be really circumspect and careful about how we do this, because we absolutely would not want to be ending up making anybody poorly as a result of our ministry. So what we've done is we've worked with Stoke Mandeville Hospital, and we're really grateful to Stefan Tiran, the lead chaplain there, who has worked with us really carefully to create a set of protocols that that will work in hospital, but that will work everywhere. We are hopeful that this will work everywhere, and it will be accessible for you guys to be able to do. But the first thing to say is that there are three different situations, we think, which people are taking communion into. One is hospitals, one is care and nursing homes, and one is private homes. And all three of those are going to work slightly differently. So whenever we do any kind of chaplaincy, we're always working on other people's terms. You know, if you're doing chaplaincy in a prison, you're very much working on the prison's terms, you're working on Home Office rules. When we're in the hospitals, we're working on the hospital rules, and similarly for care homes as well. And so these guidelines are going to work slightly differently in each of those 3 scenarios. With the hospitals, they will make their own standard operating procedure. So I know we've got Dave Short from Stoke Mandeville on here, and potentially other people from other hospitals. What we will do with these guidelines is we will send them out to the hospitals as our suggestions, and then they will each have to be passed by their own chaplaincy team and infection control people. So this is kind of not a license for us just to go out and start taking communion all over the place. We've got to do this by agreement with the places that we're going into. And as I say, each of the hospitals will be doing their own version of this, and they will then insist that their volunteers are trained so that we don't take COVID around in the hospitals, because that would really be terrible. In care homes, we are suggesting that you take these guidelines, you say that they've been carefully put together with advice from one of the hospitals, and that you talk it through with somebody at the care home, in management at the care home, before you go and visit somebody. So, you can take the guidelines in, you can email them to them in advance, you can say, what do you think? Is this working with your own guidelines? Because they will have their own insurance and their own protocols in place, and they might come back to you and say, yeah, that's fine, or well, actually, we need you to undertake the following PPE requirements. We need you to have tested on the day you come in, whatever it is that they're going to say. But we all know that care homes and nursing homes have had a dreadful time over the past 18 months, and we've absolutely got to be working with them in order to be able to take communion into our nursing homes. So it's really important. And actually, I know that the ministry pillar in Aylesbury did a visit of all the nursing homes, and they found that the staff were really happy to talk to them, and actually quite enthusiastic about having people coming in from the churches. So this is also a good opportunity for you to make contact with the staff, with the management in those nursing homes that you're visiting in, if you haven't already. So and just talk about what you do, and what is it that we do. Yes, we're quite happy to pray with other people as well. We're not just for the Catholics if somebody wants that, and all of that kind of thing. So I think there's a bit of relationship building that we can do there as well. And then the final thing is in private homes. Obviously, there aren't protocols around private homes in the same way that there are in hospitals and care homes, but we have to be just as careful. We obviously have very vulnerable people still living in their own homes. So, using these guidelines and using your own discretion, I would also say give the person you're visiting a ring beforehand and just talk it through, because it isn't going to be the same kind of visit that you've done before, where you've been able to stay for a cup of tea and a chat, and you're going to be in there in your mask and your gloves. It's going to look a bit different. So just to talk it through with them and say, this is what it's going to be like. Is that okay? Are you happy to do that? Or do you want to wait a bit longer until we can just have a normal visit? So I hope that all makes sense. We are suggesting that we've got quite a simple risk assessment, and we're suggesting that you just do a risk assessment. Now, this is not for insurance purposes. This is about just being aware. Risk assessment sounds quite formal, but it's about just saying, what am I doing? Where have I been? Who am I in contact with? What are my own health issues? What am I doing when I'm taking this communion out to somebody? How am I going to make sure, where are there points where there could be risks? And what am I going to do about that? So it's just about ourselves being aware and thinking through before we do go out into somebody's house, that we've actually really thought about all the possibilities, all the issues. If you're visiting somebody on a regular basis, like a weekly basis, then we are asking that you would do a twice weekly lateral flow test and log it, like the staff in the NHS are doing, and like actually we're all encouraged to do across the country anyway. This just means that you are keeping yourself aware of your own infection levels. If you're only visiting occasionally, then we're asking that you would do lateral flow tests the day before or the morning of the visit. And again, please do log it so that it's there. You've got that negative result back before you go anywhere. And just be aware. We've all got access to much more data now than we had this time last year. You can look and see what the cases are doing locally. If there's been a doubling in the past week, maybe think, maybe, I'll have a think about this. If you've been lucky enough to go to a family party or a wedding or something like that, again, you might think, yeah, maybe I'll just leave it a few days before I go and I know I'm out of the woods. So again, just being aware of your own, your own circumstances. And obviously, if you have symptoms, then defer the visit, because you know, nothing is worth taking that risk for. Right, are there any questions? You can stick them in the chat or unmute at this point, and then we'll move on to Father Kevin going to talk us actually through the protocols. Any questions about any of that?
Avril, it's Mari Woods. Can I just ask, if you're the regular visitor, and so it's twice a week, so if I took the test on a Monday and went and saw Joanne, so the next day, Tuesday, I can go and see Fred. But, you know, that will last for 72 hours, whatever.
What we've been advised by the hospital is that it is possible to do multiple visits.
Right, in a day, like, yeah.
It is, yeah, but obviously we need, I mean, that's one of the hospitals, another one of the hospitals says don't do that. And so, you know, I think we just need to be very aware of ourselves, aware of what we're doing. And, you know, if we can possibly get somebody else to do that second visit, then perhaps that is a good way of bringing somebody else on board.
Yeah, I'd only be doing private homes anyway, so, right, okay.
Thanks, Mary, good question.
I think
at Stoke Mandeville, what I've been doing is Sunday and Thursday. So I've been splitting it up through the week. So it covers me for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Teachers are doing Sunday and Wednesday. Yeah. I think teaching staff are usually doing it a Sunday and a Wednesday.
Lovely.
Yeah, I think
regularly.
Can I just say, I think it's really important that we would, while it'll be great if we can get back to taking communion, even in the hospitals, we would not be encouraging it much at the moment, unless for serious cases. I know that might sound very negative. In the hospitals and care homes, well, in the hospitals, first off, you will have a very clear protocol. The care homes should have negotiated a protocol, but visiting homes is going to be, and I will sound the devil's advocate, a minefield, because you won't know who's been there before you.
Yeah.
You won't know who's in the family. Certainly if people are forgetful, if you know what I mean, and I am nearly 70, so I'm getting there. You know, the thought is you're dealing with the unknown. At the moment, I think there's a lot of pastoral work going on through phone visits or just dropping the newsletter into a house or something like that. And while that is very limited, it's much better that we sustain that we come into any difficulty with cross-infection. And some of the data from Scotland today about cross-infection was not to do with the actually going into the football stadium. It was informal contact outside. It wasn't the great crowd. So we've got to be really careful. So while I am sounding very negative, I mean, it's a great thing to be able to do, but hospitals will have clear regulations, as you'll see. Care homes, as Avril said, you need to make sure you negotiate that. I think with the manager, I make sure if at all possible, because if a really nice carer says, come on in, they haven't got the authority to do that really. But the home visits are going to be the most open to problems. So, really be careful, because it would be better that we hold back and then are able to do it freely than for us sometimes to be told, right, stop it altogether. And so I think I really want to put that out before you for everybody's sake. And Avril's been very clear about how we need to be careful. So just don't feel bad if you can't do it. That's the other thing. At the moment, we're in the situation we couldn't have imagined before.
Thank you very much, Father Kevin. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions before we move on? Brilliant. Okay, Father Kevin, would you like me to share the protocols onto the screen, and then let's do that, and then we can talk our way through them.
As we do this, one of the things will be that while we're setting this out as it stands, obviously every place is totally different, every building is different. So you're going to have to make sure that you don't jump back at us on something simply because it won't work exactly in that way in your place. but you have to make sure that you can live the principle. Okay. So we're starting a preparation, Avril, yeah?
Yeah.
The rule is 1 host, 1 PICS. A separate PICS for each person. And you can see there the notion of washing hands, sanitizing and everything. And if you're putting anything into a plastic bag, again, it all needs to be sterilized, really. If you're going to put hosts from the tabernacle into pyxes, then just make sure you have the right space, so that if there's a shelf in front of the tabernacle, that might work, but you will need extra space for extra pyxes, etc. You might need to use the side of the altar, or if that's not working, then a table with a cloth on it by the tabernacle. Use gloves to take the consecrated host into the pyx. And then the pyx in, some of those, they've got some very nice zip bags that are probably like freezer bags, but that's the idea. The other possibility is to put the host into the pyx and then have that consecrated and make sure it's closed on the altar when it's being consecrated, and that put into the tabernacle for 48 hours before you take it out for communion. Taking communion from Mass does not seem to be possible because of the danger of infection. That's why in this diocese, for instance, we've said no to offertory processions, because if the hosts are on an open dish, people could easily just sneeze, and that would be contamination. So this is just being practical. If you've got questions about how you'd apply it in your own church, you need to talk that through with your own priest, but you need to observe these principles. Is that okay at the moment? If you've got questions, pop them into chat, and then Avril and I'll see what we're looking at, okay? Bedside communion. Again, PPE according to where you are, which may well be apron. I know I've gone into hospitals now where we have head coverings, foot coverings as well. Private homes, you will be providing the PPE, masks, sanitizing hands, disposable gloves, preferably anyway. If by any chance you have to give communion in the mouth, you must wear gloves, that's absolute. We've provided a service sheet. You may well have your own, but whatever you use, you either take it with you and leave it there for that person, or take it away and dispose of it. The littler the best is a real good principle. And again, keep the 2 meter distance at the moment. And I think even if the 2 meter distance, which is down to 1 in some places now, is reduced or disposed of altogether, we're talking about people who are naturally vulnerable. So it would be good to keep that distance. Again, 1 host per pyx, per person. And not using the bed space, particularly the bed or the chair that a patient would sit in as a table or a surface. If you can use anything literally and it's going to be difficult having a leaflet in one hand and a pyx in another, you've got to be careful how you do this as well. Again, when you're going to give the host to the person, you can give it with your gloves on, your sanitized hands, or very gently just tip the pyx onto somebody's hand. And again, it's maintaining the reverence with this and maintaining the care. We can't use candles, crucifix, prayer books, rosaries, anything like that. The person that may have their own, but then you keep away from that. Again, you need to make sure that if you bring, say, the newsletter so the person can read the Sunday Gospel, you leave it with them or you destroy it. We clean the pyx with antibacterial wipes. We'd probably wash it as well later on. There can't be any socializing. We can't have tea and coffee after Mass, so we can't have tea and coffee after this. I mean, that's where we are at the moment. if you are using anything that you can dispose of before leaving, do so. And to be honest, again, as Avril was saying, really we need to go to the people who are in real need, and not try to restore what was in fact a very generous ministry in many places. So that would be true, for instance, of people in hospital just for a couple of days. They wouldn't come onto the radar for this, really. I think we've got to, at the moment, until we see where the government goes, but as I said, then we are dealing always with the vulnerable. So let's just respect that. I think that's fair, Avril, is it, at the moment?
Brilliant, yeah. Thank you very much, Father Kevin. That's great. Now, I know that, sorry, I'm just trying to take the pin off you. There we go. Oh, no, I don't want to take you out of the meeting. I just want to take the pin off. There we go. I know that is a lot for people to take on board. We are going to give you the guidelines. You can take them away. You can have a read them. Actually, we'll have some comments and feedback now, but I think we might just have a little bit of time in breakout rooms so you can all go, but I was actually just remembering the first time I ever took communion to the sick myself. I was about 23. I was in a brand new role in a parish in Slough. My parish priest went on holiday a week after I'd arrived and said, there you go, on you go, you need to take communion down to the dementia ward at the hospital. And I did not have a clue what I was doing, and the whole thing just felt so difficult, and getting the little candles out and lighting things and all of that. So, and you know, you get used to it, you do it repeatedly, and it becomes second nature. So I'm just hoping that, you know, some of this, which is going to feel really weird and stiff and unnatural when we do it, actually over time, just like we're now used to putting on a mask and sanitizing our hands when we walk into a shop, which we would never have thought about doing before, you know, that has become second nature. So we're hoping that this will become a second nature. Maura, thank you for the point about lip reading. That is, wearing a mask and talking to people who are hard of hearing is really difficult, and I think we're just going to have to be aware that the mask wearing is the safety feature, which is really important. I think you've had that plastic. Oh, Father Kevin.
No, I just think, I mean, face shields are, a good face shield would be another option, and you can have, some people have now found fitted transparent type masks, and I certainly appreciate the problem, but we've got to find our way through this in each case.
Can I ask if there are any other, would anybody like to pose any questions just on what you've seen and heard?
Yeah, Eamon here. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
If I'm taking communion out on a Sunday, what 2 days, to one person, which it is at the moment, what 2 days will go for the lateral flow test? Why do I have to go twice?
Oh, that's you. Sorry, you can. I'm just popping you on, Father Kevin, just so that we can chat. You can do those lateral tests as long as they're done regularly, and you're doing them every week and logging them. It's just like with NHS staff; they just do them twice a week. So, I mean, if you were always doing it on a Sunday, then I would say do it on a Saturday night, you know, and then before you've done it, then before you're going to, or on the Sunday morning before you are going to do that visit. But the taking the communion straight from Mass is a little bit more problematic, Father Kevin. Yeah,
I mean, it's this rule of either having the host consecrated and being kept in the tabernacle for 48 hours. It's this 48-hour rule, really. It's very difficult to see.
I suppose if you went and you took a consecrated host out of the tabernacle before Mass, that you could do that, couldn't you?
Well, no, you just leave your pyx in the tabernacle. I think that would be the best thing to do. That's why this is a difficult area altogether, and we've got to abide by the regulations that belong to a secular world. But so it would either be, I think, communion from Sunday Mass, which has always been a lovely way of extending the Mass to people's homes. It's very difficult to do it at the moment. The only other option would be if the pyx, I mean, this is another way of thinking it through. If the pyxes have had the hosts in from, say, Friday, and and then they could be consecrated. That would be okay. Does that make sense?
What, consecrated on the Sunday
Yeah,
by the priest?
But the pyx must have been closed on the Friday.
Yes, get on with you.
Yeah.
And then following on from that, does the priest then leave the pyx on the altar for me to collect after Mass, or does it, or do I go down and get it from him? Up to the priest.
Well, I mean, you you could actually take, if that pyx has been closed for 2 days, I know it sounds absolutely strange, then you could collect it from the altar as often as happened. You know, people are given the pyx by the priest at the end of Sunday Mass. The problem I've got, and I mean, I know I'm sounding very negative, is, are these people seriously ill?
Right.
I think, I mean, I'm really going to sound, you know, awful, but I think at the moment, we're in such a difficult time that it may be better for us to hold back on what would have been general communion rounds on Sunday. Because I think people, I suppose the other thing is, you know what parishes are like, everybody is so charitable that somebody will say, well, why are they getting it and not me?
Yeah.
I think there could be a lot of difficulty in this. And obviously, you know, we haven't got as many ministers as before, lots of things like that. So I really am offering caution at every level.
Okay, thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Can I ask, what's the rationale of the 48 hours?
This has been from infection control.
But I don't understand what difference 48 hours makes.
Well, it means that nobody else has touched that host. I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything like that, okay? It's what we've been told we must abide by. That it means it's just in an enclosed container, and therefore, I presume if there was any danger of contamination, it would be avoided.
And if it's already contaminated before it goes in, you've just sealed it in. Anyway, yes, I suppose my professional life has been spent with infection control, so it seems odd. But anyway, I would accept it. I just wanted to ask you, what does the login of the lateral flow test involve? Is it logging it on the NHS test, a reported test, or is it just keeping a note of it?
I think I think NHS staff are required to log theirs via the actual test and trace site, the thing that comes with the test. And I think if you've done that, you've got the thing back, the text back that says, you know, you're negative, it's all logged then, and you've got something that you can go back and say, yeah, I was doing these tests, you know.
I can help on that one. I can help on that one, actually.
Go on, Dave.
I can actually help on that one, because I do the NHS test because of going into the hospital. Now, what we have to do is we do the flow test, and it goes into the little container, and we have to register whether it's showing negative or positive, and then it's left, and it's just left registered with them. Now, thankfully, I've not had a positive one come back, but that's the last of it that we hear, unless I assume if we come back positive, they will contact us and say, right, you need to do this. But that's all it is with the NHS one.
Lovely. Thanks, Dave. And I think I'm sensing an expert here.
No. No, not really. No, not really.
We've worked with the Stoke Mandeville Trust and with their infection control people on this. So it was just, I mean, they say, you know, it's one person's take, but it then gives us a kind of baseline to be able to say, right, these are the kind of underlying protocols. And you can just see there with that conversation with Eamon how we're, you know, there's a logic then, and you can say, okay, I've got this logic, how can I apply it to what I'm trying to do sensibly?
Yeah. Well, about the login, I do 2 lateral flow tests a week because I go into the prison, but we log on with a specific code from the prison. So are you providing that, or is it some other more informal way of logging?
No, just the NHS system, because the normal lateral flow tests that you get come with a QPR code that you then can use to log that test result. So it's not there. No, we don't have anything. And if you're doing it twice a week for the prisons, you've got that tracked anyway, so you wouldn't need to be doing it. and you know, lots of people are doing it for work, they're doing it for, you know, if you're a teacher, you know, lots of different ways. If you are already doing that testing twice a week, obviously you don't need to test on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just say that Avril did check with several other hospital trusts, and we went with the most severe demand because that, you know, it's the best way of doing it, really. Meet their needs.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I was just going to say, hi, it's Beth. I was just going to say, it's actually very easy. I ordered some of the lateral flow tests online. We were going to visit my sister and her children, and just for peace of mind, we ordered some, and we were able to get them. And the instructions are really clear to just go on the NHS site and just register them. And it's very straightforward. So anybody can do it.
Thank you. Thanks, Beth. Any other comments or questions? I think you're all going to want to get your hands on these guidelines and have a think about them. But
hi, it's Val. I'm just very new to this, haven't done it before. I'm just wondering who makes the decision about if the person is seriously ill then? Is that the priest tells you these are the people you're going to visit?
I suppose it's for me to answer that one. I mean, it's very difficult, really. I mean, I'm using that as a criterion, because at the end of the day, I don't know about other parishes, but ministers over 70 still wouldn't be going to visit, I wouldn't have thought. The number of ministers may be reduced, so therefore you'd give you'd prioritise really who would be best to receive communion, because we're in this difficult situation still. I do think it's important to remember, you know, that we've come through nearly 18 months of this. And so at the moment, it's to make small steps forward is the best thing to do. So, I mean, again, you know, poor old parish priests, but that is their job. But you have to be careful that you haven't got a too generous parish priest. I mean, it's very difficult. So I think we just need common sense.
I can see there being a useful conversation in a parish where, you know, the people who are up for doing this, they are, you know, up for taking this protocol out, they're up for doing the testing, they feel confident and comfortable to do it, would have a chat with the parish priest and say, well, who's on the list? Do you know, if there's 3 of us and we've got 15 people on the list, then we really do need to prioritise. We're not going to be able to do this safely. You know, if there's 3 people on the list and there's 3 of you, then that is, you know, is much more sensible. So it again is going to come. I mean, it's like everything with this blooming pandemic, nothing is cut and dry, is it? And we're trying to kind of use the rules to do this in the safe way as possible, but also then saying to you guys, you're a smart and wise bunch of people, do you know, and there's decision making that can be made locally with the priest, and it's about using resources well, it's about protecting everybody, and it's about saying, well, there's some people here who, for this, it would be very, very important. But as Father Kevin says, we've been doing this for 18 months. We're probably weeks away from a bigger opening. You know, we would hope that the numbers would come down as the more people get double vaccinated. So in some cases, it's just going to be saying, well, just hang on for a little bit longer. Let's carry on the phone calls. Let's carry on dropping the newsletter around. Let's see what we can do. Jean saying, so over 70 shouldn't take communion. No, that's never been a rule.
No, it's just that over 70s, sorry, over 70s, we're not active. We're not being active ministers.
Oh, I was, and I'm well over 70.
You don't look it. I mean, that was the rule because it was a fixed age for vulnerability for priests as well. I mean, we weren't allowed to give communion if we're over 70, even in church.
And all the hospitals had the same rule.
Yeah.
Over 70 on the hospital route. So it's been a sort of generic. I'm going to give you 10 minutes in breakout rooms, people, to just have a conversation about this and say, okay, how do we feel about this? Is this actually what I was hoping for? I suspect probably some of you were hoping you could just get right back to where we were 18 months ago. And I'm afraid.
Can I ask a quick question, Avril, please? Before, right, listening to this, and I'll take it for communions going into care homes, which is a single room or might have one or two, or to a private home. I haven't been taking communion to hospital since this pandemic. Now, to me, that feels going to be slightly awkward. And I think this might be a question for Kevin, that if I'm going into Stoke Mandeville to say 5-6 patients that require communion, I'm going to require 5 or 6 hosts, or 1 host or 2 hosts that I can possibly break. Otherwise, it means I'm going to have to put it down, go back to the church, to the tabernacle, or wherever, or see the priest to go back again. I don't know if Stefan's gone through any of this with you at all, with his policy, the possibility.
I mean, they were the Anglicans were talking about using the paper disposable drug dispensers and putting a host in each of those and then stacking them.
Yeah,
I suppose we felt that I think we'd feel a bit delicate about that, to be honest. I think every hospital this is why multiple visits and multiple communities, you've got to really talk that through in your own context. Because, for instance, it'd be very different. I know this might sound odd, but certainly I'd know this, that if you were in a hospital where you were in and out of different areas and had to walk through all sorts of different groups, or if the cafe was open, I don't know. You know, you need to look at the actual situation there and see what would be said. So in the case of Stoke, you definitely do need to talk to Stefan about the practice.
Yeah, because we're changing all the time. I'll go to one at the moment. I'm just giving prayer and having a chat with the patients. But every time I go from one ward, I have to change yet again into another outfit for another ward. So it's not being transmitted from one place to another.
I mean, at the moment I'm changing, going to different patients even within the same ward. It depends where you are. So I think within hospitals, that's why we were very clear, and Avril did a great job on getting this thought through. You must talk through with the hospital protocol.
That's what I needed to know, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave. Thanks, Dave. And I think that's, it's just to say that the hospitals will develop their own, they're called standard operating policies. They will develop their own SOPs. And our guidelines are just, look, this is how we have talked to one hospital, this is how we think that it could be done, and they will then take that away. And we've seen about 3 so far, and they've been really different in terms of how they're written, the guidelines and everything, but those will have all been passed by the individual hospital infection control, and you have to abide by that. And when I say have to, what I mean is the consequences are a potential complaint, or indeed the communion getting stopped altogether while the hospital takes some time to think about that. And I have known that happen pre-COVID, where one person's just had a moment of just not thinking straight, done something they just weren't thinking, and then the hospital said, right, we're stopping everything for a couple of months, we've got to think about this. So actually, when we are doing these procedures, we're taking it might feel awkward, it might feel stiff. We've absolutely got to abide by these protocols, particularly in hospitals, because the consequences are quite extreme in terms of us getting banned. So I really don't want to have any conversations with lead chaplains telling me that we've got rogue chaplain Catholic volunteers out on the wards getting up to all sorts of stuff. We've really got to pay attention to this. So Carmel, really good question, Carmel. If the government lifts restrictions, do you see this advice being maintained for some time still? We think the hospitals will maintain it, and we think that the care homes will have their own procedures and policies into the future. And it feels to me that if hospitals and care homes are going to be maintaining these stricter regulations, we've got to mirror that for private homes, because we're not saying that they're any safer. As Father Kevin said, they're actually a complete unknown quality. So we will do what the hospitals do. We will mirror the hospitals and do what they are doing, and as they peg that down, we'll peg it down as well. So on the bottom of the guidance it says to be reviewed, when restrictions are changed. But we just don't know. I mean, the flu, we don't know what's coming around the corner. So we feel like this is a good place to start. We can get used to it. We can have a go. We can do it with a few people. We can do it within a hospital setting very carefully and probably being accompanied. Certainly Stefan was saying that he would want to accompany chaplains walking around, because just the sheer taking off and on of the PPE is complicated in itself. So we're going to just do this as a kind of slow start, have a go, and then we will keep talking to the hospitals. And as the hospitals bring their infection control advice down, we and the care homes are able to open up more, then we will then also be able to peg this back. Does that make sense, everybody?
Can I just add one thing, that the regulations that are coming out not from the church world or the church understanding of sacrament. They're coming out from infection control. And they're looking at, I mean, if you know anything about food hygiene regulations, that's what we're saying. We're taking something that people consume into hospital, and they're dealing with it perhaps just as they would with food. So we've just got to go with the flow at the moment.
Does somebody have a comment they want to make?
Yes. Hello. Hello. It's Noreen here. Do you have the prayer cards for spiritual communion? Because, you know, I'm not saying they replace the sacred host, but I think, you know, would be a comfort to have that special prayer for spiritual communion.
If you go into the Dawson website, all of them are there on the COVID resources.
Yeah, for the individual, when you go to visit or send it with a in the post or whatever.
Yes, they're all there on the Dawson website.
Yeah, I think we don't have prayer cards as such.
No, you have to print them out, really.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Print them off and do them as prayer cards. You would have to take one in and leave it with them.
Yes, that's right. So they've got that there as a, you know.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Oh, sorry. Somebody else want to say something? No. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes in breakout rooms, chaps. You know how to do this. Don't just jump in, introduce yourselves, and just have a bit of reaction time. How does this feel? Does this feel like a hopeful step forward, or does it feel like a ton of regulation that we've just dropped on you? Okay, just have an opportunity to have a little chat about that and see how you feel, because I want to make sure that we've given you all a chance to chat. And do introduce yourselves, and there aren't any facilitators in these small groups. I haven't gone around and picked people beforehand, so just jump in and get chatting. Okay.
You're all right, Ian.
And we're not recording in the small groups, so they are not recording. to say what you like.
One of the things we did in our parish, obviously we can't take communion out at the moment, but we put an appeal out for new Eucharistic ministers, so that we can at least get them trained up. At least we can get all the safeguarding stuff done, so that when we are allowed, we've got, and remarkably, we got 3 new volunteers. But as I said to one of the other people in the breakout group, I think you have to get out your violin and really lay it on with a trowel and say, you know, we're talking about lifelong Catholics who haven't seen anybody from the parish or received communion for 18 months. You know, your parish needs you.
Excellent. Nice one, Peter. I think that's great that we get ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a training course for new Eucharistic ministers, September time, already laid up from the diocese.
Yeah, so that's I will pop that into the chat as well. Thanks, Peter. I'll pop that into the chat as well. You can see I've put in there the communion rite, which has got a couple of different versions of the spiritual communion prayer in, and then our guidelines. That's what we've been showing you today. And I'll put in there the poster for and we'll put all of this on the email that goes out. So don't worry if you suddenly think, how on earth do I download something off chat on my phone? Don't worry about that. It will all come out to you on an email. Anybody else want one more comment before we just Anybody else want to share anything?
Somebody mentioned in the breakout room I was in that in their parish, ministers have to be double vaccinated, and so does the person who's being visited. Is that something that has come up in your discussions?
Certainly the double vaccination in terms of infection control would be expected in hospital control, as far as I understand it. I mean, obviously not everybody is agreeing with that, and there are certain groups that are hesitant. It's not a requirement, but I mean, it is something that I think the thing about that I'd say is that you would need to know the situation. Does that make sense?
Yes, part of your risk assessment, really.
Yeah, and I know it's very difficult.
You did mention that ministers over 70 shouldn't be going out. Or is that a flat rule, or?
Well, that's been the rule for a long time about vulnerability.
I never heard.
If they're double vaccinated, I mean, that's a good point, Anna. We can raise it with the hospital. I mean, I know, for example, there's a lady down my road who hasn't been vaccinated for very good reasons, nothing to do with being an anti-vaxxer, absolutely to do with their health and other issues, and having had a major operation. But I would be hesitant to go into her house, even having been double vaccinated myself, because I've got secondary school kids. And so, you know, there's all of that kind of thinking that we have to do, where we said, you know, that's why we would do a risk assessment. It's just about thinking through, what am I doing here? You know, what are the risks implicit in this? And is it worth taking the risk?
Yes. Sorry, Avril, to interrupt. We seem to be skirting around the age of 70 quite a lot. So what is the line? What is the line? If you're over 70, should you be taking communion to the sick?
I wonder if that has changed, Father Kevin, with the vaccines. I'm thinking it might have changed.
Yeah, I mean, it was set very clearly as the vulnerable age, and I'm not sure, because I was 69 and still am 69 at the time, I'm okay. You know, it's a very arbitrary thing. But I think it was an attempt to make sure that well, it wasn't just us, that was the national guideline at the time for everything, not just for church. And I suppose we still stayed with it, really. Again, the risk assessment, you know, somebody who is vulnerable in their 50s, you know, for different reasons, is vulnerable. So use the word vulnerable then.
I think, I mean, so yourself, Father Kevin, almost 70, is, I'm sure, more able than lots of people who are a lot younger than you, and I think that's an important point to draw out. A lot of our ministers are of an age, you know, it's just the way it goes, and I think we'll lose a lot if that age limit is a you know, a full stop kind of thing, and we have to deal with that.
I think again, it's vulnerability. I think it's also the possibility, you know, that if we have had, you know, what chance are we giving to others to come on board? Because I think sometimes we forget that if we give way, we can let other people in. So that's a good thing to think about. But the other thing I'm really conscious of that Avril was saying, you see, you know, the person in the home could be double vaccinated, you could be double vaccinated, but if you've got secondary school kids, you know, there's no the danger either way there. And the number of people, I mean, it's tiny. I think, is it 3% of people who've been double vaccinated who actually get COVID again? So that whole thing of risk assessment has got to be very, very broad.
We are out of time, everybody. Gosh, thank you very much for all your conversations. This isn't a full stop by any means. And one of the things that Father Kevin and I, is that it says on this kind of draft guidelines, because we wanted your thoughts and we wanted I mean, you've posed some really good questions this evening. I'm going to go away and say, you know, are the hospitals taking people back over 70s? What is their considered approach to this? If you're over 70, you're double vaxxed and you've got no underlying health conditions, you know, like, is that okay? So I will go away and find that out. I will ask our fantastic lead chaplain, who's been really helpful. If you've got concerns, please do email me. You can just reply to the email that had the link on it this evening. If you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, if you've got some good tips, if you give this a go and when you come back you say, oh my gosh, this is completely unworkable, I needed 3 hands to do it, again, please let us know, because this at the end of the day has got to be workable, and it's got to be something that, you know, there's no point, we could make a really watertight way of doing this that nobody could do, and there's no point in that. So it's got to be usable at the end of the day. So do keep in touch with that. Thank you everybody for participating tonight. Thank you for taking part in the small groups and for all your questions and comments. And as I say, I will send an email out afterwards which has got all the information on that you will need. So Father Kevin, thank you so much for your work on this with us. I really appreciate you as the Liturgy Commission getting involved, and all of your guidance has been invaluable. Would you like to give us your blessing to finish the evening?
And I'd echo Avril's thanks. And I would say, please do look at all the COVID resources that are still on the Dawson website for everything and anything, because you can pick and choose from that. And they're all there available to you. So let's give thanks to God for all the good that we know is in people's lives, and especially the goodness of those people who care full time for the sick, the people caught up in the vaccination programme now, people who are giving so much, because sometimes we can forget, especially now with long COVID, is causing havoc to some people's lives. So please do think about them as we pray. And let's ask Mary, the Mother of the Church, to pray with us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he look upon you with love and give you his peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody, and let's do this again in a few months' time. Like we said before, where we've gathered people, we'll gather again in a few months. We'll take the temperature. We'll see how this is all working out, and we'll take it a step at a time. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Avril.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.